As the furious floodwaters slowly recede, they leave in their wake heaps of debris clogging the streets of cities and scattered throughout the lowlands and valleys of 13 states. Nature, with the limitless power of water, in a few brief hours, has wiped out the result of many years of labor by man. Torn by the frenzy of the floodwaters of the Ohio River, West Virginia grimly and courageously sets about the task of rehabilitation, faced by a sea of mud. In Wheeling, gangs of men labor everywhere, clearing mud from the streets. Workers in the service of public health, advanced agents of rehabilitation, while others remove great piles of debris which clog the streets. They are WPA workers, bearing the brunt of relief. From the Ohio Valley to the coast of Maine, wreckage and devastation is widespread. People are hungry, they are homeless, families are separated, some of their members never to return. The problem of reconstruction and relief is urgent and immediate. With the drama of the emergency now past, the nation is faced with a gigantic task of reconstruction. The states appeal to the federal government for help. As the largest unit of the works program, the WPA, with its crew of able manpower, immediately swings into action. 275,000 men and women being assigned at once to relief work in all flood areas. Theirs is no simple task, no routine of duties. They are prepared to render quick and effective service, wherever needed, from feeding the hungry to clearing the streets and restoring household goods. And mud is only one problem which confronts the WPA workers. Pumps are hastily installed and flooded cellars cleared of subterranean lakes. Lime is spread over infected areas where sewage and refuse threaten epidemic. The face of the ground is covered with slime. It becomes necessary to wash that face. Enormous as was the emergency, WPA was not unprepared. Weeks ago, there were indications of impending floods. Undramatically and quietly, WPA executives laid out plans for action when and if the moment arrived. Cities and towns made their best estimates, and their requests were answered with $18 million worth of flood projects. It's not easy work, this job of reestablishing men and women in the everyday business of eating and sleeping. It's filled with all kinds of problems, but spurred on by the relentless efforts of the WPA Army of Flood Relief, the work of rehabilitation proceeds apace. Pitiful remnants of the homes of men are gaping reminders of the fury of nature unleashed. But behind it all is brought out the fortitude of mankind in emergency. Nothing can equal the spirit with which WPA workers assume the gigantic task which confronts them. In Wheeling and on Wheeling Island, the caprice of the waters had gone to unbelievable lengths. In many cases, the wreckage is of enormous weight. It becomes necessary to use the heaviest modern machinery in order to remove quickly the tons of debris which choke the streets and constitute a very real menace in case of fire or other emergency. Reclamation is the hardest job of all, calling for hours of persistent labor amid depressing surroundings. Courage is repeatedly demanded and repeatedly delivered. The WPA workers face a huge task, a task to be done efficiently and with no hope of special reward. Nevertheless, they welcome the job, for it's pay they're earning and not the dole. Homes are left buried in mud in many sections of the city, and hours of work are necessary before they may be cleaned sufficiently to be occupied. Mud carpets the lower floors of dwellings and has to be removed with shovels. The millions of dollars worth of material wreckage which fills the streets and towns of cities pales into insignificance beside the sight of the thousands of hopeless refugees left homeless by the receding torrents. On the stunned faces of fathers, mothers, and little children, hours of fear have stamped their mark. The WPA refugee centers for the care of the homeless bring to mind the memories of scenes during the Great War, when women and children were fleeing from the terror of artillery fire and the staccato of machine guns. But whether it be war or a catastrophe of nature, the suffering of humanity is the same. Families are made homeless. People are ill and hungry. It is in this great task of caring for human beings that the women workers of the WPA have performed an invaluable service. Homeless, with nowhere to go, no place to turn, the first cry of the hungry thousands is for food. Their need is pressing and immediate. women of the WPA are prepared to feed these thousands. Kitchens and refugee centers are hastily set up throughout flood areas. Tirelessly, night and day, these women work to do their share. Millions of dollars and countless carloads of foodstuffs are immediately made available from WPA headquarters. Nor do the WPA workers alone carry the entire burden. Field mess kitchens are set up in countless numbers by the CCC and other relief organizations to take care of their own workers and any who might ask for food. No choice French cooking is offered, but it tastes mighty good to the exhausted relief workers. With the echoes of roaring water still resounding in the hearts and minds of millions of people in the flood area, city and town officials, together with WPA engineers, are checking the total damage. A huge task of rebuilding faces 13 states. As their pressing needs are calculated, WPA reconstruction crews take up this major scale of restoration. From there, they will go on to projects of future flood prevention, predicated on the hope that should disaster again threaten, these stricken areas will not face again the fury of the elements unprotected. To those who have experienced the terror of flood and whose homes and lives are under the shadow of its menace, the need for greater protection is pointedly apparent.